What's up, world? This is America. My name is Hobson McCain,
My name is Mark Ray Redmond.
and we are back with our international news segment. Um, you know, this episode could be talking about a lot because there's a lot going on, as always.
As always.
This administration is very active, and there's never a shortage of news with them. But we're going to be talking about the Peter Strzok hearing with Congress and the implications that has on the Russian investigation. So, just for some background, Peter Strzok was the chief of counter espionage in the FBI, and he led the investigation into the Hillary Clinton investigation, and also he started the investigation, or he started off leading the investigation of Russia collusion with the Trump administration in the 2016 election. As you guys know, in opposition to what Trump and his buddy Vlad have been saying, it has been concluded that Russia did interfere with the 2016 election. So when they brought Peter Strzok on, it was with good reason. Peter Strzok had led FBI Operation Ghost Stories, which identified two Russian agents who had infiltrated American society. They built a background story. Moved to Canada, lived there for 20 years, came to America, got a degree from Harvard, and were actively trying to influence American politics. Peter Strzok was the one leading the exposure of them. So he obviously has a pretty extensive background in counterespionage and keeping foreign entities out of interfering with our elections and our political processes. Now, he was later removed from the Mueller investigation because of some text messages that he sent to his friend. She was not a friend. She was he was having an affair with his wife. It's just that's not good. We don't support that. But he was having an affair with his wife, and the FBI agent he was having an affair with, Lisa Page, they were exchanging emails back and forth, and he criticized different political entities. Donald Trump, obviously, Chelsea Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Eric Holder, and he was removed from the investigation because Mueller did not want the investigation to appear to have bias. And when those text messages came to the public eye, that obviously looks bad for the investigation, kind of discredits the investigation. So he was taken off of the investigation. Now, Republicans aim to discredit the Mueller investigation and the investigation into Donald Trump being associated with the Russian interference by discrediting the person who led the investigation, which is Peter Strzok.
Peter Strzok didn't lead that investigation, though. Peter Strzok led the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, if I remember correctly. And he was brought onto the Mueller investigation, but it was his investigation.
Yeah. Mueller led the it's called the Mueller investigation. So obviously he's the head of the FBI. He's like leading the charge for the investigation. But Peter Strzok was brought on board as a pretty high-ranking member of the investigation and was later taken off because of this apparent bias. So if you guys didn't see the hearing, it was very, very eventful. Now, the Republicans were coming crazy, for lack of a better term. They were, I don't want to say that they were unprofessional, but they were attacking Peter Strzok's character, Peter Strzok's, his commitment to the FBI and how the FBI operates, basically. They repeatedly harassed him on his affair. One representative even went so far as to say, "I don't know how many times you looked with that smirk on your face and lied to your wife about the affair.
Self, and I can't help but wonder when I see you looking there with a little smirk. How many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous.
The credibility of a witness
Shame
is
on
always
you,
an
Mr.
issue.
Mr. Chairman, please, there's
Have
You
Mr.
know, Chairman, this is intolerable harassment of the
What is
witness.
wrong with that? You need your medication.
The gentleman controls the time.
Like, fair point outside of a hearing in Congress. Like, I mean, I guess if you want to say that to him personally, but the people who are criticizing him about this affair, are being investigated for sexual misconduct themselves. So that, that's kind of hypocritical. And then my last point on Peter Strzok specifically is that his main rebuttal to everything that the Republicans were asking him, saying, if you were sending these texts about Donald Trump, how you didn't want him to become president or how he would be disastrous for America, how does that not show bias? And he said, I have a political opinion, just like all Americans do. Americans have political opinions. If you're a human being, naturally in your head, you do have inherent thoughts about politics. Like, you think certain people are good for politics, certain people are bad, and everybody is entitled to that. But Peter Strzok's main point was that none of that ever interfered with his work. And they actually did. They wrote a 500-page, not dissertation, but a 500-page report about how there was no evidence that Peter Strzok's actions were ever influenced by his bias. And yet he was still brought in to Congress to be bombarded with nonsense.
You want to know something funny, Javi?
Yeah. Let me know.
FBI guidelines say that you're allowed to have a political opinion if you're in the FBI. You're a citizen. You still are allowed to vote. And in order for you to vote, you have to have an opinion. You have to be on one side or the other.
Yeah.
And he actually wasn't on either side because at that point when he was sending those text messages, Barack Obama was president. Correct?
Yeah.
So they were running for office. Everybody he was talking about was running for office. So in essence, he was doing what everybody should be doing and vetting each one of them. He saw flaws in everyone, and you can't say that he didn't want Donald Trump to be president because his investigation was a large part of why people didn't trust Hillary Clinton. He brought to light a bunch of stuff about her that led to people not liking her, to keep it honest, which like to keep it up.
And going along with that, it's interesting because there was evidence of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign during the 2016 election. And they didn't release anything about it. But James Comey, who was the FBI director when all of this was happening, released information about Hillary Clinton's emails that,
lost her the election.
Lost her the election, essentially. That's the main reason why most people didn't vote for her. They said they couldn't trust her because of these emails.
She still won the popular vote.
Yeah, she still won the popular vote, but Donald Trump won the electorate. And that's interesting that they say that Strzok, who is leading the investigation against Hillary Clinton, was a part of the releasing of that information that lost her the election, had bias towards Donald Trump because he's investigating into him colluding with Russia. And now keep in mind, like, it's not like this allegation is far-fetched. 2 Trump aides have admitted to lying about these encounters. Up to a dozen people involved in the Trump campaign are being investigated for Russian collusion, including...
There have been indictments.
Yeah, indictments. There's 4 indictments.
Who's sitting in jail right now, Paul Manafort?
Paul Manafort has been indicted. He was the campaign chairman. Rick Gates has been indicted. He was the campaign advisor. George Papadopoulos was a campaign advisor, and Michael Flynn was Trump's national security advisor. All 4 of them have been indicted in relation to the collusion with Russia. So
nobody was making anything up.
Yeah,
it's not like he was just having unfounded suspicion. It was for a reason, because he said that he wanted to vet Donald Trump's and his colleagues because he knew that if Donald Trump was to become president, that his colleagues would be placed in high offices around the White House and around in the government. And we just couldn't have that if they had been colluding with Russia, just like it's turning out they have been.
Yeah, and that all came to fruition. So, Donald Trump actually sat down with James Comey and told him to let go of the Michael Flynn investigation, which was the investigation going on during the 2016 election.
Obstruction of justice.
Yes, when Donald Trump was running for office, James Comey was investigating Michael Flynn, who was his national security advisor. Now, when Trump got into office, Trump had a meeting with James Comey telling him to let go of the investigation because Flynn was a good guy. James Comey didn't let go of the investigation and was later fired by Donald Trump. Like that's a little bit suspicious, like you can't say that lying is an admission of guilt, but lying is an admission that you're hiding something. So you guys can interpret that how you want to. Now, in a more recent note, Donald Trump just met with the leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and after they had a 2-hour-long meeting behind closed doors, Vladimir Putin re-emphasized the fact that there was no interference in the Russian election. And Donald Trump, despite the conclusion by multiple U.S. intelligence agencies, including the Republican majority Senate committee that has also concluded this, he said that he agreed with Putin. He said Putin has adamantly denied being involved in any sort of interference in the 2016 election. So he basically sided with the Russian leader who has, because due to Republican rhetoric and Republican propaganda since, the Cold War in the 70s and the 80s, Russia has been seen as one of our biggest adversaries on the world stage. So he basically sided with Vladimir Putin over multiple U.S. intelligence agencies. These are his people who are working for his government. And as a president, that seems a little backwards to me. Like that seems like you should trust the people who have years and years of experience working on behalf of the American people, on behalf of maintaining the national security and maintaining democracy in America. You should side with them over Vladimir Putin, who has, vocally opposed the West, American democracy, America. He poisoned two people who were Russian refugees in Britain. He poisoned them in their own home on British soil. So it's like this guy obviously has no respect for the West or any of our institutions. And yet our president
stands to gain from admitting that Russia meddled in our election. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no. I mean, he's not going to gain anything from admitting it, except I think like it. So my stance on it is that this was an opportunity for Donald Trump to look Vladimir Putin in his face and the rest of the world who have been talking about this collusion with Russia and how Trump's in Vladimir Putin's pocket. Like these are the things that the left have been saying, and even the middle and a little bit to the right. Like there's a large expanse of people who have been saying this, and this was his opportunity to tell Vladimir Putin that isn't tolerable. It's not going to be tolerated in the future, and that if it happens again, there's going to be consequences. And that might not. Yeah. No, Donald
Trump won.
He won the election.
Donald Trump won. So, if anything, Donald Trump, in his mind, went in there thinking, "Thank you, Vladimir. I appreciate it. Because without you, I wouldn't have won."
Yeah.
So you gotta think he's not looking at it the same way that we are.
I'm just saying, like you said, he won the election, and whether he knows it or not, Russia. Vladimir Putin said in the press conference, "I did want Donald Trump to win." He said that. So, there's no argument about who Vladimir Putin preferred. There's no argument about whether Russia interfered with the election. All I'm saying is that now that Donald Trump's president, to invalidate all these Russian collusion theories and all that stuff, he could have condemned the action of interfering with our democracy and just defended the institution of democracy. He didn't have to, you
But
know.
you have to remember this about Donald Trump, though. He kind of part of his platform was the fact that our government was corrupt. So I don't think that he's the most trusting of the government that he's the head of. And that is a dangerous thing to have if you're the president of the United States.
Yeah.
I don't know how much he believes in them. And that's just my opinion. That they're not his people, if he didn't put them in the office, because you see how quick he is to get rid of people that don't agree with him.
Yeah, but he was the one who appointed Mueller for the FBI director. So like
Mueller and him are not friends right now. Right?
no, they're not friends because he's still investigating him. But my point is not to say that Donald Trump should say, "Oh yes, the Mueller investigation is happy and dandy." But my point is just to say, as president of the United States, it's your job to defend democracy in the United States, you know, and to adamantly side with someone who has vehemently opposed democracy in the United States, has opposed, you know, the world's decisions on, you know, Ukraine and Crimea. You know, like Vladimir Putin doesn't have any respect for any institutions that anybody except Vladimir Putin puts into place. So by siding with Vladimir Putin, it literally just shows how much of a puppet this guy is for Putin. Like, you know, and it's I don't want to say that just because, you know, it's scary to think that Vladimir Putin has the president of the United States in his pocket, but when you have a multitude of intelligence committees, intelligence agencies who have for years defended the United States from, you know, foreign and domestic terrors and threats alike, like, you have to acknowledge their legitimacy. And he basically just, you know, earlier this week on Monday, basically said, I trust Vladimir Putin more than I trust our intelligence committees. And for a guy that he says he didn't know before he got elected, that's a lot of trust to put in somebody. You know, like...
You know, it's dangerous for the president to be acting like this.
Yeah. And for me, it's just like... none of these investigations are unwarranted. You know, Don Jr. met with Russian intelligence in Trump Tower because they said that they had information again that could incriminate Hillary Clinton. Right. Now, his defense of that was that, oh, they just gave me a bunch of pish posh and, you know, nothing came of it. But looking back, I would have done things differently. That was his defense. So he said that basically we were trying to interfere. We were trying to use Russian intelligence to incriminate another presidential candidate.
I just don't understand how that doesn't count as colluding with Russia. Like the attempt, like if you attempt to murder someone, you get an attempted murder charge. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if you try to undermine our democracy, just because you didn't accomplish your goal doesn't mean that you should get in trouble for it. It doesn't mean that your dad should still be able to become president of the United States, possibly with help from stuff that you got from that meeting, because, you know, I don't personally know what was said in the meeting. I don't know what came of it, but I do know that Russia meddled in our election. So I don't believe him when he said that they didn't have anything that helped Donald Trump.
And the thing is that Don Jr. didn't have any official position with the Trump campaign. So, and there's no evidence that Donald Trump himself knew about that meeting or, you know, was informed about any information from that meeting. They haven't been able to prove that yet. So that's why there hasn't been any charges against Donald Trump. Like Don Jr., I think should 100% have gotten charged with something by now. Like he admitted to meeting with them for that reason of getting information that would incriminate Hillary Clinton and would help them win the election.
I don't know what more you need. It's a confession.
Yeah. So, you know, the fact that it's interesting that they chose to bring in Peter Strzok to talk about his involvement. And, you know, he obviously, the FBI told him not to answer any questions about the investigation, and the Republicans were trying to, you know, ask him questions like, "Oh,
About the
who
Russia
did you interview?"
investigation.
Yeah, you know, they're trying to ask him direct questions about the investigation, and he said that he couldn't answer them. So they say he was ducking and dodging the questions and all that.
It's an ongoing investigation. It's not over with. So it's procedure. You can't talk about an ongoing investigation. He would get in more trouble if he did that. So they were trying to get him in trouble by asking him those questions.
And the funny thing is that the chairman, who's a Republican representative from Virginia, he actually threatened to subpoena Peter Strzok and bring him back with the possibility of being held in contempt, charging him criminally for not answering those questions that the FBI and his lawyers told him that he couldn't answer because it's an ongoing investigation.
Nothing will come of that because he's not allowed to answer those questions. And that was the reason. Like, he was not instructed by the FBI. It's kind of procedure for the FBI to not comment on ongoing investigations.
But what's really interesting about it is when Steve Bannon was brought in front of Congress, and he was actually already being held on subpoena. Like, he was forced to come in. He refused to answer questions, and the Republicans sat by idly and, you know, twiddled their thumbs, while he was refusing to answer questions that could have been incriminating of the president or incriminating of himself. You know, he refused to answer those questions, and the Republicans didn't say anything. So, you know, with all this, it's amazing to see how far the partisanship of our government has come, because the Republicans are some Republicans. I'm not going to say all Republicans here, but some Republicans are so loyal to the right that they would rather the Mueller investigation just be stopped, even though there is a possibility that there was collusion with the president. Like we said, there's already proof that there was interference. Now they're just trying to prove collusion. And for the Republicans to have such a loyalty to their party that they don't want justice to be served and the truth to come out, that's kind of frightening. That's kind of like
dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous. Exactly. It's 100% dangerous. You know, this opens a lot of doors that we just don't want to open. You know, that could...
Pandora's box. If you get to moving like this, you can't stop it, because the only way to combat it is to move the same way that they are. You can't try to have bipartisan communications if they're only focused on benefiting their party.
Yeah.
It won't work. So you'd have to focus on yours, and that's just not that's not how we need to move as a country. We need to come together, and that's just going to drive us more and more apart.
And you know, in coming weeks, we're going to talk about a little bit how, because we feel like, or at least I personally feel like, a lot of our shows and episodes have been highlighting what's going wrong with American politics and what's going wrong with society as a whole. And in future episodes, we're going to make it a point to start focusing on how the American people and how, like, you, the viewer, can actively help in changing these things. You know, in a couple weeks, we're going to have senatorial candidate, PA state senatorial candidate, Mark Princely. He's going to be coming on to the show. And, you know, we're going to have questions from people who live in the Lehigh Valley, people who are going to be his constituents. We're going to ask him a lot of good questions, just have a really good conversation about how these things can, start to get changed. So with that, we're closing it out. Thank you guys for tuning in. Shout out to our editor extraordinaire, Brandon Leaks. He's been doing some great things with our editing, coming up with all our great contents. And make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, following, sharing with friends, doing all that stuff, because educating yourself is a good step. But in order for a movement to actually happen, there has to be a mass education, a mass expansion of knowledge. And a lot of people just don't know about a lot of these issues because they don't know that they need to. So make sure you guys are sharing with your friends, watch it with them. Do your own research if you want to. So anyway,
send us questions.
Yeah, send us questions, send us topics that you think we would do good at, or even that you're just interested in hearing about, and we'll consider them and we'll shout you out if your topic is chosen. So thank you guys for tuning in again. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.
Be safe.